welcome back to my channel, Cayla Jordan TV. I am here doing a 10 tips and tricks little video just because I felt like it was super important to just have it all in one video. I always say like, oh, it's really important to do this or really important to do that, or just like other things randomly when they come up in my videos. So I just want to have one video like dedicated strictly to like, okay, I'm about to make something. I need to watch this video before I make it, because otherwise you might end up ruining it or like have really good
Wow, that's nice to say.
No, I'm serious. I used to do these things. So like seriously, I've only known this from my personal experience. Like, if I didn't already go through this, then I wouldn't be able to tell you guys. Let me tell you, I would be the one to be lazy and be like, oh, you don't need to do that step, you can just do this. And most of these, like, I would tell you if you could or could not do that. So that's why I'm kind of doing like I've already tried it. So for you guys, I already know what's up. So you guys don't have to go through the same thing I went through, you know? You know? Okay, well, let's just get started. So the first tip and trick that I have is you should always preheat your oven. So it's mainly the most important with cakes. So when you're making a cake and you don't preheat the oven, and the reason that it's most important is so that the cake cooks evenly. When you're preheating the oven, a lot of bursts come through the oven, and a burst of like heat come through to the cake, and they're in spurts rather than it baking completely even, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So, I'm not asking you, I'm asking them. I'm just kidding.
How
I'm just
rude.
kidding. I'm just kidding.
I'm keeping
I'm just
that
kidding.
in the video.
Just kidding.
So you guys can see.
I'm just kidding.
For real.
But yeah, so the oven should always be preheated. And so that leads me into my second tip, is that you should always put the cake, we're just going with cake here, in the portion of the oven that the heat does not come from. So say your oven heat comes from basically only the bottom. You've like figured out that the oven heat only comes from the bottom, or from the back, or from the top. So you need to figure out where your heat is coming from and place your item accordingly. So say you have a peach cobbler, for example, and you want it to be crispy on the top, this is where you would want to put if your heat is coming from the top, you'd want to put it on the top rack. So it'll be like nice and crispy and it'll bake all the way through and it'll be so good. But if you're making cookies and you don't want them to be like burnt on the top, you would want to put it in the middle of your oven. So, or like cakes, especially if I've had this problem more than once, is where the heat was coming from the bottom and I put my cakes in the middle rack when I should have put them at the top, because the bottom of my cake was like burnt and the top of it was like not even done. So that is a good tip right there, is for you to just figure out where your heat is coming from. And if it's coming from the back of your oven, you should always just rotate your whatever you're making, cookies, cupcakes, cakes, in the middle of your baking, or else it'll definitely cook on one side like more than the other. So you should just definitely keep rotating. I know it sucks, but you gotta just do it because that's the kind of oven you have. So yeah. So the third tip is to have the correct pan size for the portion of batter. So say you have brownie batter and you want to make them really thick, you would want to use a 9-inch pan instead of a 13-inch pan, because the 13-inch, obviously it'll spread out way more thin and it'll take less time to bake than the thick one. And you would have to put your temperature down more if you're making them thicker, because you don't want to like totally crisp up the top and the bottom and not have it done in the middle. So it's definitely important to use the correct pan size that the recipe is saying, or it'll be all your bake times and oven temperatures will be off. So make sure you use the correct pan size, or if you don't, then adjust your time and temperature accordingly. Okay, and this is probably my most used tip number 4, is to always use an ice cream scooper when you're portioning out your cupcakes or cookies. Your cookies will be perfectly round and they will look like store-bought. I swear to you, I will be in the kitchen and my dad will come in and there'll be cookies on a plate and he'll be like, "Hey, are these homemade?" Like, what? Yeah, they're homemade. Well, they just look so perfectly round. And I'm like, Dad, I'm right here making the cookies. But anyways, so yeah, they will look perfectly round and perfect for your festivities or whatever you bring your cookies to. They'll be like, "Oh my gosh, are these homemade? Oh my god, what?" So yeah, so definitely always use a scooper, and same with your cupcakes, because you don't want your cupcakes to be, you know, different sizes. You'll have one that looks like this baby and then one that has like a huge like either peak or mushroom top, so, or a muffin top or whatever. so always use an ice cream scooper. And the 5th tip is to always set a base time. So if you're making a recipe that calls for it to have like 13 to 15 minutes, if your oven runs really, really hot, you should always put it at like 8 minutes. Always. Well, not even if your oven runs hot. Like if your recipe says to cook it for 10 minutes, always do a couple minutes underneath, because the worst thing is to burn your baked items. Like that is the worst thing ever. You can't go back from that. So it's always best to check them at an earlier time rather than be sorry about burning them. Like you always want to be safe than sorry. So I would always put your timer on for less time, check it, and then do like 2 to 3 increment time minutes like after that, and keep on checking it until it's done. Most of the time for cookies, it would be a brown ring around the edge. For cakes, it would be until the toothpick comes out clean. For my cakes, I personally like to bake them until the toothpick comes out just a little bit gooey. Not wet, but just kind of gooey, and because they will always still bake in the pan, and that's what keeps your cake nice and moist. Oh, same for cupcakes. Cakes and cupcakes are about the same type of bake, they're just smaller. So yeah, that's that tip. Okay, so I don't remember what tip number this is, but it is going to be never to use cold eggs, because cold eggs don't incorporate into your batter as good as room temperature eggs do. They will always be a little bit more like, I don't know how to say this, maybe stringy. That sounds nasty, but you will see a little bit more of the egg white in your batter, rather than if they're room temperature, they just like go right into everything. So that's that, and goes into the next tip, which is to always use room temperature butter. That is super, super important, because then if you don't, then especially in cookies and cakes, in pretty much everything except for pie crust and biscuits, you use room temperature butter. In pie crust and biscuits, you always want it to be super, super cold, but for room temperature butter, you always want to use it. So anyways, the room temperature butter is key to everything, because then you'll have like chunks of butter in your cookie and it won't be fully like incorporated. There'll be a chunk of butter in this cookie and no butter in this cookie, so you wouldn't want that. So yeah, big one. This one's a good one. I always say this in all my videos, is to have a handy dandy scraper. I always use my spatula to scrape down the sides of the bowl, because so many ingredients get stuck on the sides when you're making anything, either when you're mixing or using a handheld mixer or a KitchenAid mixer. Everything gets stuck to the sides, and if you're using a KitchenAid mixer, it definitely gets stuck in that little pocket down below. You have to like scoop down in there and get all of that, and you like need to make sure you get all of your ingredients mixed together, because otherwise there'll be chunks of stuff everywhere and all your stuff will taste chunky. So you want it to be super smooth and yummy. That's especially when making cheesecakes. You just want it to be so smooth. So that's why I always use a scraper in everything. Like if you're making icing even, you'll have all your icing and then all of your powdered sugar will be up on the sides. It's like you want all that sugar and goodness in the icing. So make sure you scrape down all your stuff before you have your final mix. Okay, so I would say that one was the most important. Yeah, the most important for sure. That should have been the number one. That should have been my first one, but whatever. I just did it that way. And so the second to last one would be to read the recipe all the way before you start making it. I've had this happen to me like every day of my life. I feel like I don't even take my own advice. I'll be like, oh yeah, we have everything. And then I go to the cupboard or cabinet or however you say it, and there is nothing in there that is in this recipe. I'll be like, I thought we had eggs. Oh, I thought we had milk. Oh, I thought we had butter. Nope, you need to check everything, read the whole recipe, check everything, and the time, because sometimes I'll be like, oh, it's just cookies. Like, I'll just make some cookies real quick. We have everything. I already checked that part. But then I go down to like step number 6, and it says to refrigerate for 2 hours. I don't have that kind of time. I thought I was just making a quick batch of cookies. Like, where did that come from? So read the recipe all the way through. Last tip, tip number 10, is to always make sure your cake and cupcakes are completely cooled before icing. I couldn't even tell you how many times I was like, oh yeah, these are cool. These are cool enough. They'll just like be like room temperature to ice. And I'll go to ice them, and then my icing will just completely fall off in the matter of minutes, because my icing is homemade icing, and it's made with real butter and not all those preservatives, and it's like going to melt pretty fast. So if I put it on just even a slightly warm cake or cupcake, it'll just slide off completely. So make sure you have almost like cold cupcakes, not frozen, because then that won't stick to it. So just make sure they're really room temperature, like set it out for at least 30 minutes without the pan, because the pan will even create heat from that. So when you ice your cupcake, it'll just fall off and it'll be really sad news, and you'll have to make your cupcakes all over again. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this 10 tips and tricks. And I will link down below a section to where you can get an actual printout of all of my tips and tricks that I just talked about, so you can have it handy with you. You don't have to like go back and watch the video. I will put that link down below, and I will see you in my next video. Oh yeah, don't forget to subscribe.